This week, Kara Sprague, the CEO of HackerOne, is with us to discuss the AI fix for infrastructure's oldest risks. Then for our second interview, Mike Privette, founder of Return on Security, joins us to discuss the state of the cybersecurity market. Finally, in the enterprise security news, funding announcements seem to be ramping up before RSA. Should security architects be shifting right? How McKinsey's AI platform got hacked by AI. Amazon is having a bad time with AI lately. Europe announces a Google Workspace Microsoft 365 replacement. Robot dogs are apparently guarding data centers now. Some much needed security humor in our squirrel stories before we all fly to San Francisco and lose our minds for a week. All that and more in this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. In today's threat landscape, cyber attacks move fast, and security gaps, siloed tools, and slow response can turn small incidents into major breaches. That's why organizations need a proactive, unified defense from a single, trusted partner. SentinelOne Wayfinder Threat Detection and Response delivers proactive, scalable defense built for modern threats, unifying expert-led readiness, threat hunting, incident response, and 24/7 managed detection and response. Harnessing Google Threat Intelligence, industry-leading AI technology, and unmatched expertise, Wayfinder helps teams see attacks sooner, respond faster, and reduce risk across the entire attack lifecycle. Ready to stop attacks and accelerate response? Learn more at securityweekly.com/SentinelOne. Wayfinder, where threat intelligence, AI, and human expertise deliver true cyber resilience. When it comes to the UK's critical infrastructure, cybersecurity isn't just protecting IT system or data, it's about keeping the lights on. Airbus Protect specializes in OT security, shielding the industrial systems that power our transport, utilities, and government. With UK national security clearances, they provide a sovereign-first approach that most providers can't match. They bridge the gap between complex engineering and modern digital threats. Secure your operations with a partner who understands the high stakes of British industry. Speak to their experts at securityweekly.com/Airbus Protect. That's securityweekly.com/Airbus Protect. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Let's Laugh Day.
Ha ha ha.
It's just today. No, rest of the year, no laughing. Only today. Get it in. Get it in while you can. Watch some Netflix specials, stand-up comedy. This is episode 451, recorded on Thursday, March 19th, 2026. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining us is the connoisseur of cloud security, our single origin co-host and resident coffee sommelier, Ayman Elsawa. How you doing, Ayman?
Good, Adrian. How are you?
I am doing good. I've had my coffee. I had some espresso just a few minutes ago. One of many reasons I was a little late to prep for getting ready here.
For good reason.
And yeah, it is a good reason. It's you don't want decaffeinated Adrian.
Yeah. I had my coffee quite some time ago. It was around 5 a.m. or 5:30. But it was a really good one. I have a nice one right now. It tastes like berries, and it's such a joy to have. So I'm really enjoying this batch. It's from a roaster in Minnesota that I stumbled upon. So,
oh, nice. Yeah, I've got a mix of like 6 different roasts from different people, and it's one of them I got as a gag because there's you can order coffee over SSH. So you SSH to shop. What is it? Terminal.shop, I think it is.
Nice.
And I signed up for a subscription, but I couldn't cancel the subscription, and there is no web interface for this. So I emailed them and I didn't get an answer for weeks. And I keep getting this medium blend that's just, I don't know. I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan. And I was getting a bag of this a week. And I was like,
wow.
Please help. Like there were like 7 different Linux boxes I might have done this from. I logged into all of them and all of them said, you don't have a subscription. And like, it was really funny doing that on a I think we were recording live on a podcast. I was like, I'm going to order some coffee over SSH. So it was a fun gag, but I'm not sure if it was worth it in the end.
Yikes.
All right, a quick announcement, and then we'll jump into our interview. Security Weekly listeners can save $100 on their RSAC 2026 All Access Pass. RSAC 2026 conference will take place March 23rd to March 26th in San Francisco. By the time you hear this announcement, it will be March 23rd. And unless you live in San Francisco, you're probably not going to end up using this discount code, but I'll tell you what it is anyway. You can go to securityweekly.com/RSAC26 and use the code 56U5SecWeekly. We hope to see you there, and I'm pretty sure they will sell you a ticket if you show up on day one of RSA. So maybe somebody can find this useful. All right. For our first interview, we're going to discuss how AI could help secure critical infrastructure. We're excited to have Kara Sprague, CEO of HackerOne, with us today. Welcome to the show, Kara.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to have you with us. I had to do a little bit of research on you. I think last time we had somebody from HackerOne on, it would have been your predecessor, but definitely spent a lot of time. I've done some work back when I was an industry analyst with HackerOne, and we've had a few folks from the bug bounty world keynote besides Knoxville, which I started here in Knoxville. So, and I'm on both platforms, both of the big platforms that come to mind when I think bug bounty. So a lot of love for the bug bounty platforms. Happy to have you on today.
Happy to be here.
All right. So jumping into it here, I thought it would be useful to kind of, go through this logically and talk about maybe start off with, the kind of challenge that we're facing here. And my partner actually 10 minutes ago, maybe 15 minutes ago, shared a 60 Minutes clip with me. They were interviewing somebody from the town of Littleton, Massachusetts. And apparently China had gotten into their networks and had access to things, but it's China's MO. Like, they're not going to do anything. I think it's likely either they were training new recruits, they were just practicing, or they just wanted us to know that they could do it. Right. And, but still it's, I think a good reminder that we have some very scattered critical infrastructure. It's not well protected. I think this was one of those cases. We talked about this on the prep call, Kara, where it's just, it's a small town, 10,000 people. Probably the mayor is also running the water treatment plant, and he's the only firefighter. And, he or she is, they wear a whole bunch of hats. It's a small town. And there's a lot of that in the US.
Yeah, there certainly is. And I mean, there's water treatment facilities. You start thinking about power plants. You start thinking about dams and other things that are holding back Mother Nature from, devastating towns and cities. And then on top of that, there are a number of other elements that are classified as critical infrastructure that could be targets for attacks. I think about, for example, like oil fields, where we have a lot of drilling going on. Mm-hmm. And increasingly, all of those are operated by some sort of technology. And in many cases, that technology is very, very dated. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I think the key problem here is that a lot of industrial systems have lifespans measured in decades, but the software, the platforms, the operating systems that their software runs on, have lifespans measured in like half a decade, maybe something like that. So yeah, we still have Windows 7, Windows 95, 98, I'm sure, out there. And sure, like maybe some of it's air gapped, but some of it's not. Some of it's still just sitting there on the network. So, the result is we've got all these fragile systems, fragile networks. Like with OT, we often hear like you're not even allowed to scan the network because something might fall over. Mm-hmm. And in a world where the goal is resiliency, that's not great. That's not a great position to be in. So I wonder, like, do you ever see these organizations pop up like with bug bounties and things like that? Or is this more like something where maybe the US government will have one that covers a whole bunch of them as in a program? Like what would this even look like to help some of these organizations out?
Yeah, we see a few programs where we contract with a larger organization, for example, a government entity, and that government entity then opens up a vulnerability disclosure program for a number of smaller entities. Mm-hmm. So, for example, protecting smaller government contractors under the umbrella of the DIB program for the DoD. That's an example, and that is a model that could apply in these kinds of situations. I think it's really tough, in particular, because to your point, these are this is critical infrastructure. It is protecting the health and livelihood of a bunch of people. The technology is super dated, and in many cases, the technology is highly vulnerable. And we are entering into a world now where the cost to perform a cyber attack is basically approaching zero, with the AI-driven tools and the ability for attackers to basically just launch 1,000 ships to try and to find something that is vulnerable. And so this is actually a real issue that we're going to have to figure out how to tackle.
Yeah. Eamon, I don't know if you've ever come across any of this stuff. I've done a few pen tests on OT, and it kind of is snatching candy from a baby. It's about as like, I remember we were doing an on-site, and the data center door, like the door in a restaurant where they pass between the kitchen and the dining area, mm-hmm. like it's just a door that swings both ways. That's the door that they had to the data center. Wow. To where you could turn off all the aluminum smelting equipment, which I think it takes like a month to get it going again after all your molten aluminum hardens.
Wow. No, I don't have any a lot of direct experience with OT in particular. Definitely very familiar with it. I've heard a lot of stories, been following it for some time, and between Darknet Diaries and everything else that we just keep up to speed with, it's interesting. My question, I guess, how would, how can AI, if we can't even scan this stuff, right? And if you're saying, Kara, that the cost is becoming near zero, which is pretty true, what are we to do? And I know we're, in some part of this here, we want to talk about AI, but like, I can't see, if you can't even scan it, like maybe just passively, like what are some solutions that we're looking at here?
Well, I think, some of the technology, I imagine, can be scanned. I agree. There's probably a portion of it that is air gapped, but these days, even if you modernize an environment with, or you add a component to an environment that's from, the recent decade, a lot of those components end up being internet connected, and then you might end up seeing some sort of lateral movement into what was previously considered an air gapped environment. So I don't know the extent it would be very helpful for us to have a much better mapping of where is all of this digital critical infrastructure, what of it is actually accessible from the public internet, and then drive a more systematic view or systematic review of exposures. That is something that, from the bug bounty platform perspective, right? We have tried to create visibility and shine a light on where we see there's these potential security issues, but you again run into the challenge of funding and resourcing really for the individuals to address the issues that are found from the vulnerability disclosure programs.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking like it could even be simpler. I'm just as a layman approach. Someone just takes the manifest of all the devices that have been ordered and built, throw it into some sort of GPT. Although there would need to be some sort of GPT that is specific to OT security, and then kind of map out our vulnerabilities there, and that would be a great starting point. I think a lot of these organizations don't know anything of what's going on, and so that'd be a great starting point. But yeah, anyway, just some thoughts there.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of cases where they absolutely knew about some of the issues. And sometimes, these are well-funded, large security program financial services companies. And after the breach occurs, because I spent a lot of my time studying how the breach happened, the different failures from like the cultural and process side of things to the actual technical failures. And we often do see, oh, yeah, there was a pen test and it showed that, this was an issue. It needed to be get taken care of. And, if they're struggling to do that in financial services with plenty of budget, it's half the battle just discovering the issues. And then, we keep talking about how vulnerable the OT systems are, but one of the biggest cases of OT disruption that we have, Colonial Pipeline, was actually IT systems that were impacted. So we can't forget about that also. A lot of these organizations, in that case, it was a billing system. A lot of these organizations also have IT systems that are that need attention as well.
I think that's to your point exactly. It's not just limited to the OT assets. You have to take a much more expansive view, much like we have to take a much more expansive view on what are the targets that could cause significant disruption to individuals and businesses. Again, if you think about how AI has changed the game here for the cyber criminals and for the nation states, it's so much easier these days to launch a very broad attack and seek out a number of assets and kind of just hope, throw a bunch of spaghetti at a wall and find something. And at the same time, on the defender's edge, especially for those that are trying to defend these super dated systems, with limited resources, they're at a distinct disadvantage in this new world.
Yeah. And there's another angle here that I think is important. With these critical systems, I've known people over the years, and in fact, way back in 2017, when I started my own consulting company with a good friend, one of the things we wanted to do is spend 10% of our time looking for these kinds of issues and notifying these companies about them. And so we use stuff like Shodan, was around back then, or just internet scanning, to try and look at very vulnerable stuff with big impact. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the importance of VDPs and how they hook in here as well. If, people, if communities want to try and help here, there's still maybe some barriers there.
Yeah, and this is, so what is a VDP? It's a vulnerability disclosure program. What it enables is it enables a global community of independent security researchers. And increasingly, these security researchers are what we would call bionic researchers because they themselves are leveraging a bunch of AI technology to facilitate their own work. And it enables that community to responsibly disclose vulnerabilities and exposures that they find. So that the owners of the technology can fix those issues before a cyber criminal or other type of attacker might exploit them. And so that is a mechanism that could be used to try and address and shore up some of the gaps that we see in these systems. In the commercial world, folks also go towards paying out rewards for finding these vulnerabilities, and that's when you get into the world of bug bounty and into vulnerability rewards programs. But what we have seen is in a place where you have a smaller number of maintainers or you don't have a lot of resources to drive the processing of the reports and also the remediation of the findings, especially in this AI-driven attack world, those maintainers can very quickly get overwhelmed with what's coming at them. And so that's been one challenge in trying to drive a different incentive structure for people to find these issues.
Yeah, and how has that affected your business model in that sense? Like where you're getting a barrage of things, but you say, we will triage your bugs and everything like that. So it's causing more work for you, I'm assuming, but interested in hearing more about that.
Well, much like anywhere else in cyber, it's a cat and mouse game. The defenders have to adapt just as quickly as the attackers. And so we have been adding a bunch of capabilities into our platform to help us sort through the noise more effectively. This is, like I said, this is much more of an acute issue in places where you have maintainers that are effective. Like think about open source projects, where you often have like a single maintainer who's also responsible for sorting through the reports and then ultimately doing something and getting other people to help with remediating. In commercial organizations that are better funded around their security programs, oftentimes they have teams of people that are also helping and assisting with the report validation. But what I'm really excited about seeing is the advancements that we've been making on this technology over just the last year or so. We have done made quite a lot of progress in automating many parts of triage intake. And now we are working on the triage validation pieces. And in fact, we just released a few weeks ago a validation agent that is intended to help companies with exactly this. And we make that also available to the open source community through our community edition.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's exactly where I was going to go next. Because with the right scaffolding, like we've seen, AI can either create a whole lot more noise or it can find a whole lot more valid bugs. And really the difference there is the experience of the person wielding the tool, and understanding like what a good bug looks like, where to look for it, pointing the AI in the right direction, giving it the right prompt. I don't know if you've been following the curl developers blog. He's been
very closely. Yes.
Yeah, it's just man, it's you could make a reality show out of it.
Yeah, you can even pull together the YouTube videos that have been shared about it to make that reality show. No, I'm very, very familiar with the curl challenges.
And it's super interesting because he's like, some of the best stuff I've ever gotten has been an experienced researcher using AI. But unfortunately, I'm also getting the other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it was a problem before AI existed. You would get these kind of nuisance submissions where somebody would demand payment. Hey, look, I found something. They ran a tool. They don't understand why, some forms of cross-site scripting are just noise. And yes, you'll find 300,000 instances of it if you run this tool on this website, and somebody gets to explain that to them, right? And tell them why they're not getting paid.
Yeah.
But that validation, I was going to say, with the right scaffolding, with the right tooling around AI, where it can maybe, check the quality of the finding, or like it sounds like with validation, actually, determine its exploitability.
Mm-hmm.
Like that could be huge for increasing the quality of the.
It's funny because when you think about that, we've invested a lot of companies invest a lot of money in different cybersecurity technologies to run scans and identify vulnerabilities in their environment. And in some cases, that's a lot. I mean, that's effectively what they have been looking to HackerOne as a platform for, is for help identifying exposures. And what we see when we talk to some of our customers is they really see the value from this independent security researcher community combined with what they are doing with AI, because they are not only just finding more complex and more risky, higher risk exploitable issues, but the kind of fidelity you get from a signal like a platform like HackerOne is a much higher percent of truly exploitable issues than what you might find from some of these automated scanners. And that's because of that discernment and because of that judgment from that human researcher. And so, just to put some numbers in perspective, we have one customer who shared with me that through the various vulnerability discovery tools that they have running around in their large financial services environment, they get something like 4 million findings a year that their team has to somehow sort through and figure out what to do with it. And the vast majority of those findings are not exploitable or turn out to be parts of code bases that, they are actually not using. So it's not actually a real risk in the environment. And yet it consumes a huge amount of resources from their security team and from their developers to determine what is actually risk that needs to be remediated. And you compare that to, what we're seeing as Signal across the HackerOne platform, where, somewhere between 20 to 25% of the reports are actual real exploitable vulnerabilities. They're not duplicates. They're not spam. And those translate into real risks for organizations at the level of another 20 to 25% of that 20 to 25% are high or critical severity vulnerabilities. And so it's just a vast difference in the kind of fidelity and signal you can get from looking at this from an adversarial perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and like on the defender side, it's considered like the I guess the gold standard at this point is not only something is exploitable, talking about like CVEs, vulnerabilities with CVEs, which obviously once you're testing in-house custom apps, none of these are going to have CVEs. Like APSEC is a totally different world. But even with the CVE stuff, it's considered kind of the gold standard to know that the vulnerability is exploitable, maybe verify that it is remote code execution, which, is that's what attackers are looking for in most cases. And exploit code exists. It works reliably. And then it's being actively exploited. So now it shows up in CISA-KEV or something like that. But even with that CISA-KEV list of like 1,500 vulnerabilities, some of those are information disclosure. They're not remote code execution, right? So sure, an exploit exists and you can run that exploit, but all it's going to do is maybe the internal IP address of that device gets leaked. Like on its own, as an attacker, I can't do a whole lot with just knowing, that the internal IP address is 172.16.1.1, right? And that's the kind of stuff that you need to filter out. Like that's where that offensive skill set comes in handy. Like you show any kind of scan results to an experienced pen tester or security researcher, they can immediately separate the stuff that's really potentially damaging from the stuff that's not. But how do we codify that at scale, right? The bug bounty platforms, like HackerOne, that's one of the ways to do that. But I think that's the key thing that's missing in a lot of vulnerability management programs is we don't have that offensive skill set, those eyes that can very easily separate the stuff that's truly dangerous from the stuff that's a waste of your time.
And that's where I think this is where the whole part of the industry is moving towards. It's going to be very much about moving into continuous testing because Adrian, I mean, you know from your pen testing background, the one and done pen test once a year when you have technology that's changing daily isn't going to cut it. So a paradigm of having much more continuous testing, much more offensive or adversarial perspective in order to give you that view on what is truly exploitable. And then much more clarity on how you prioritize issues related to how much risk they would actually reduce for your organization, right? Because I mean, if we think we're moving into an era like the developments we've seen out there, like cloud code security, super, super exciting from the perspective of maybe we can stop shipping so many vulnerabilities.
Right.
But we don't yet have great solutions for the just mountain of vulnerabilities that are sitting out there in existing technology deployments today, like where we started with critical infrastructure. And so we need to have solutions that not just discover these vulnerabilities, but find a way for them to move through validation, prioritization to remediation much more quickly.
So as kind of a, before we wrap up here, because you're kind of on the front lines of watching this, like there's a lot of automated pen test tools out there. There's a lot of AI driven tools out there. In fact, we just saw a really interesting one. I think we're going to talk about in the news with McKinley, where an AI agent found this vulnerability and was able to pull a bunch of data out of McKinley's systems, and it was fully autonomous, just finding that vulnerability, figuring out how to exploit it. Apparently the agent did all that without, before there was a human in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something the folks on your platform are worried about? Are they worried about being replaced by some of these tools, or do you have a really solid feeling that no, it's going to be these same people using AI on into the future, or we just don't know at this point? I'm curious.
We are very welcoming into this, and so like whatever tools can help our researcher community and our customer community in finding and fixing these exposures faster than a cyber criminal can exploit them. We are looking to take advantage of that. So HackerOne, we even have our own agentic pen test capability that we have now made available to our customers. So we're very excited about the potential there.
Awesome. Kara, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk about the state of the cybersecurity market with Mike Privette from Return on Security. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive Security, the first cybersecurity company backed by OpenAI. AI has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape. Today, the greatest risk isn't someone breaking into your systems, it's someone breaking into your trust. Deepfake voices joining your video calls, AI-crafted phishing emails that perfectly mimic your executives, even synthetic job applicants entering through the front door. Adaptive Security is designed to counter these new realities. The company delivers real-time attack simulations that show security teams exactly what modern AI-driven threats look and sound like, and prepares them to respond effectively. Learn more at securityweekly.com/adaptive. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Mike Privette joins us today to talk about the state of the cybersecurity market. Mike is the founder of Return on Security and the very popular security-funded newsletter. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, Adrian. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. I think this is the third year we've done this in a row. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
It's, as everyone seems to say today, it feels true.
I like
Seems
that.
true. Let's give people, for folks that aren't familiar with Return on Security and your newsletter, maybe a little overview of what you do and why they should be aware of it.
Yeah, so Return on Security is what I call a cybersecurity market intelligence company. So I basically study the cybersecurity market from think of like a threat intelligence or an open source intelligence OSINT kind of approach. And I try to track all the money coming and going in public markets and private markets for security companies and investors in the space globally. And I was just fascinated by the puts and takes and how all this works. And so I thought maybe I should start writing this down. Maybe I should over-engineer it and make a database. Maybe I should start, putting it out on the internet. And all those things came true. And so now, I just follow everything that happens in the industry each week, and then I publish what happened the previous week every Monday. So I've been doing this for about almost 5 years now, which is kind of insane to think, because this might be the longest job I've ever held.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's when I was an industry analyst, basically the combination of what you do and what Richard Stinnen does, every industry analyst does it independently. And I remember thinking, this is dumb. Like, there should be a service that we just pay for that has all the cybersecurity companies in a database, and you just do queries in the database. But still today, like every industry analyst out there has a spreadsheet. And they built it themselves. They spend like 10 hours in it every week, and they update it, and it's always incomplete and it's always wrong. And it should just be it should just be a service that somebody else puts together for you. So I love that you're doing what you're doing and Richard's doing what he's doing, which I think there's a little overlap, but it's still quite separate what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I agree. I try to cover just also like kind of what does it mean from an economic standpoint. So, what does it mean that money went to this category or this country or from this country? How does it tie into interest rates? How does it tie into economic policy? Because cybersecurity is also national security. How do these things tie in? Like how do all these pieces kind of level up? And I try to look at it from more than just a purely like here's just a list of companies or a list of investors, and categories change hands. They come and they die. They get invented. They get co-opted, and then none of that kind of is super important. But really, the piece of how is the health of the industry doing? How does it move with or against other parts of the world, like AI or fintech or anything else in the world? And so I just found it interesting to take kind of like an economic lens to it as well.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious. Have you reached the point where you have more AI bots reading your newsletter than humans? Do you think you're going to reach that point?
I think I'm coming close to the point of, at least on the blog front. So, it's funny. I'll see people sign up under the name OpenClaw at their domain name, or agent or scraper at. So I see a lot of those coming. I see what people are doing. And then I'll also, watch the traffic on the website, and I'll see like, you just got 1,000 hits from local host. I'm like, very good, very good. So I'm just like, this is great. I'm glad somebody's using it. So. But no, it's, I had kind of an aha moment this year when I was writing the annual news report, and just watching the traffic, because the website's behind Cloudflare, not sponsored, just I like Cloudflare. And so I noticed that bot traffic was significantly rising all across time on the website. So I'm like, I need to make this more bot friendly. Like, it can't just be pictures. It's got to be more verbose. It's got to be data tables. I need them to quote something if they're going to use it, because I know they're going to try to use it anyway. So my thought was, let's just make it easy as possible. So luckily the newsletter format was already kind of lends itself to that, and nice bullet points and organized in certain ways. But hopefully real people still read it. But I also hope their agents do too.
I do.
Thank you.
Every week. Yeah, so we talked about in the news a couple of weeks ago, but there's a new standard for bots to read websites called WebMCP, I think it is. And it's basically like the bots get a JSON blob instead of having to parse HTML. Here's a JSON blob that's much more efficient, bandwidth and data efficient.
Yeah, it makes sense for the web to move that way, to be honest. I mean, you got to meet people where they want to be on these things. And if they want to be doing and reading this from Claude Code or whoever else their agents are these days, that's where you need to be.
Well, it's all part of like GEO, so generated engine optimization. Like, people are not even searching anymore. So they're literally asking, ChatGPT and Claude has to reference something, right? So
yeah. And I've seen it too. Like, I'm getting a lot more referrals from these foundation model sites like Claude AI or OpenAI, and which is nice. It's good to see like how it's changing. It's kind of interesting being on the edge of it and seeing how it moves, and instead of just like, I think this is happening, I can prove it with data.
Yeah, that's really cool. The other thing I wanted to ask about before we dig into the market was how Signal is going. Like, I know you introduced that a couple of weeks ago, and it's free, and it's basically all the data behind how you put together your newsletter. Are you regretting yet not charging money for it? Like, I know you've been getting a lot of requests on features for it.
Yeah, no, the reception has been really good. I've gotten a lot of features. I kind of went to the thought process of, I already send so much to the newsletter anyway. It's already free right? And effectively, I put charts in interactive charts, and I made this for myself to begin with because I wanted to make the process of making charts for the newsletter and just looking at data like quickly much easier. So the data's already out there. It's just do you want to spend the time to collect it and categorize it yourself, or would you rather just come look and read it? And even still, like, I have a lot of demand for stuff that I've not published yet. So this is just a fraction of what I have. I just try to make it easy and simple to use. I've got a lot more cohort analysis and competitor benchmarks and all these things that I haven't published yet. But some strong interest for people who want to pay for it on an API or an MCP, which is pretty cool because this is all new to me. But in the meantime, it's just been great to be able to point people to say, here's where you can go do some research, and like a simpler, easier way. And the data is all public anyway, so I don't need to gate what's already free. Is my opinion. So and then I'd rather be the source than maybe make tens of dollars.
Right. Yeah. I appreciate it because it's it's great for when you want to scratch an itch and you're like, I wonder if like how much of the market is this? And we're going to get into some of these questions that I'm going to ask you today that I'm going to bring up from the State of Market report from 2025 can easily be answered just by going to signal.returnonsecurity.com and clicking on a few filters, and boom, there's the answer to your question. So I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. That was my whole goal. Like, how do I make that giant report that takes me like 200 hours to write much easier for myself? That's how it started.
So I'm going to ask a series of potentially stupid, certainly probably spicy questions, and just to get your take on them before we dive into the report itself. And the first of those questions is, are there too many cybersecurity companies?
Probably, yeah. And I think, that's probably true for many industries, because you'll often see companies pop up solving like an obscure new slice, or perhaps like an old slice in a new way. And then you'll see lots of other companies kind of rush to do similar things. And then eventually, a year or two later, you'll hear about 2 or 3 of those. And then, the 2 of those 3, might get acquired. And then the rest of it's just like kind of quietly shifting and shaping around. So it's definitely an industry that has a lot of choice, which I think is good. But I think it's high stakes competition too. So it also leads to some kind of like wrong incentives in cases like that. And some of the, early days that we probably remember because we all have gray hair, but, the kind of scammy early days of security marketing and outright fabrications of product roadmaps and things like that. And
you mean
long before AI was real?
You mean that's gone? That doesn't happen anymore? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's it's hard to say, but at least AI is real now. We can say that. It's now it's a matter of like, what do how do they apply it? I think we're a bit smarter, and I think the industry's gotten better, but it's not quite as bad as it used to be, I think.
Yeah, certainly. I remember being on when I was an industry analyst. It was my first year, and it was a CASB company. I won't say the name of them, but they were giving me the briefing, which looks very similar to the sales pitch that they show customers, just slightly different discussion, slightly different slides, and saw the logo of my old company on there. And while I was on the briefing with them, I'm texting my old coworkers like, you guys bought this? And they're like, no, we don't know what you're talking about. Like we looked at the demo, but we haven't even talked to anybody there. And just downloading the demo, they're like, boom, customer, going on the customer slide.
Yes.
And
that's amazing.
I called them out on it on the briefing. I was like, yeah, I just talked to my friends. I worked at this company 6 months ago, and they say they're not a customer.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think you could get away with that today.
That was 2013. So that, certainly it doesn't happen anymore, I'm sure. And then, the other thing, like I once saw a CISO saying on LinkedIn that they set aside their entire Friday every week to just take briefings from vendors. And I thought that is insane. As an industry analyst, I didn't spend that much of my time talking to vendors. Like that's wild. So, kind of the question there is, is the market a distraction for practitioners today?
I think that's a really interesting question. On one hand, it's hard for practitioners to learn about what's new unless you look at the market externally. But in fact, that was one of the main reasons I started writing Return on Security was to simply keep up with the new companies that came out. I found there were just too many, and I was like, wait, there's some I don't even know about. I don't even know how to like categorize them. I don't know how to talk about them. I don't know how to compare them. So I need to start writing some of this stuff down just for my own self. I think if you don't do that, then your head just might be in the sand, and you could be really missing some very great companies that can either leapfrog some existing tech you have, or just solve a lot of your pain points that you may have and just don't know where to look. But then it's super easy to get caught up in like the category names. It's super easy to get caught up in like who the biggest and flashiest raise was, and I think people used to associate large raises for equals success and therefore a great product and must be the best company to work with. And that may have been true for a short period of time for some, because they could attract the people and the talent at the time. And now so much of that stuff I would say is democratized that it's probably much less of a signal than anything else to know, like follow just the money blindly. So you have to see like, what are you even solving an interesting problem in the industry itself? Mm-hmm. Or are you just kind of another flavor of the exact same thing we already have? And I think, most companies fall like in a normal distribution in that kind of like in that confusing middle section. That's the majority of the bell curve. And so you have to do some level of research and some level of market work. But in my mind, a lot of that's going to that peer kind of thing most days. That's like texting your friend, texting a colony group or a Slack, and finding out like what's the real, who's actually used anything. And so I think that's kind of how information travels now. And then because they still have to filter out whatever the market noise is and the marketing noise might be,
Yeah. Yeah. Back in 2014, like over 10 years ago, I used to have a talk that I do called 10 cybersecurity categories you've never heard of. So not companies, but I would present, and I did that presentation probably not quite a dozen times, maybe 10 times. And not once had anybody heard of any of the companies in any of the 10 categories that I presented. And that That's was amazing. 2014, 2015. And that just kind of, and the purpose of it was to kind of highlight like how much is out there.
Yeah. It is shocking. And it just keeps growing.
So next question here, I want to get through these pretty quick so we have time to get to your report and more state of the market. But for what you do and what Richard Stinnen does, funding seems pretty central to it. Like everything, all the reporting seems to revolve around funding. But there are bootstrap companies out there. So the question is, how do they get seen, right? Like if they're not raising money from VC, like how does anybody, like what do they do to make sure they also get seen?
Yeah, and this is a hard question too, because it's one of discovery. Like how can you sell to people that don't even know you exist? But it's also an interesting thing, being in Europe, more companies are bootstrapped than not, than they are in the US. Really? It's a very common path. And in fact, many companies will be bootstrapped for many years prior to even considering raising VC, and only after they've made it like successfully for many, many years. And many of them are quite successful too. Like local markets.
Seems insane, right? Like find market fit first, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does, and but it's also a function of there is no early stage capital comparatively in Europe compared to the US. Mm-hmm. So where you have possibly hundreds or thousands of places to go find money in the US, you have far fewer than that in like an industry in Europe, and so that a lot of it's born out of function. But it's hard to get visibility, and then I think part of it's too, like some of them don't want the same level of visibility, because it's one thing to have kind of a lifestyle services business that's like maybe an MSSP or professional services, or maybe just you and some friends who are really good at offensive security things. You can have quite a successful business that way, but there's not outside of a few like country specific websites, like here's, or like geographic centric websites where they say here's cyber in Europe. I found an interesting website the other day that where you could self-identify where you were and what you did. And the trouble is you'll just get lost in a list of people, and nobody can really tell what you do versus one thing or another. And inevitably, all of it's AI written, so it's hard to discern anyway. Um, but I'd say I always capture the companies whether they're raising or not. So I've got several hundred companies that aren't public just because they've simply never had a transaction before. So reach out. I'm happy to hear about your company. Like I'll collect it, I'll do it, and part of what I want to do on Signal is also to find a way to publish some of the Bootstrap companies in a way that they can at least be found. At least have a source and say like, oh, I didn't know this. Pen testing firm was in Estonia. Maybe that's something you're interested in.
Yeah. Some of my favorite companies are Bootstrap. So yeah, very, very interested in that. To kind of kick off talking about 2025, I wanted to share this, and I think you've both seen this, but this was a very different show, ESW. Like the news segment used to be much more focused on like the stuff that you do. You doing this newsletter has actually changed the shape of the news segment of this show. Like, because you do such a good job of covering all the funding and stuff like this, we just have one item in the news every week where we're like, yeah, go look at what Mike's doing. Like we don't need to tell you about this anymore. Like, we'll pick a few things out of it. Like we love doing the vibe check every week. But back in the day, we used to cover this, and we actually had on-screen graphics. The way we used to do it back when we were live. Our producers would throw up on-screen graphics, and we had a unicorn graphic, and we even had a decacorn graphic where it was a unicorn with 10 horns. Just because every episode there was at least one new cybersecurity unicorn, and then it stopped. And so this is 2022. It's going to be impossible for anybody watching this to see the dates at the bottom. But the x-axis down there starts January 11th and goes through December 8th. So this is all of 2022. And I think this is right around the time, like maybe end of 2022, you started your newsletter. So I thought this would be an interesting place to start with, because you've broken down cybersecurity into separate eras. Because this was such a weird year. This was clearly a year where, the interest rates, the market, had a clear delineation. Like you can clearly see in June, we went from new unicorns every week to no more unicorns. I think we've had maybe 2 since then, at all. And then the blue line there are layoffs.
Yes. Yeah. 2022, like that time frame, about June was actually when like the bottom fell out of every market. Like it was tech broadly. Because interest rates in the U.S. shot to the roof, and all of a sudden, companies in the previous market segments or the eras had all been about like growth at all costs. So raise a lot of money, burn a lot of money, hire a lot of people, and get growth at all costs. We'll figure out profitability later and like good operational management. And then all of a sudden, people realized the burn was too much, and then it was just far too expensive to start lending out money, and far too uncertain for the investors to want to write more checks even into existing companies. And so the spigot got turned off, and then you realize, the customer revenue is not there yet either, because we were burning far more than we were making in hopes that one day that flips, right? That's always been like the SaaS dream, I guess, initially, is that you get to a saturation point, and then eventually the revenue numbers work out, but it can take a very long time to do that. And then a lot of companies were left high and dry. They might have grown, 1,000 people in, a span of 2 years, from 100, 200 people. And then they realized that, we overhired for a market that isn't buying. And so then that shifted into a very much like kind of the what I call like the expense management era of like 2023 and 2024, where all of a sudden like profitability was important. Like making revenue and having traction was more important than just having numbers or just having GitHub stars or just having, marketing dollars thrown at anything. It was the first time people kind of looked and said, how do I reconcile this and then start running it as like a smart, like managed business that is meant to kind of go the distance, not just do the traditional SaaS explosion process. So that was quite the reckoning. And then 2023 and 2024 were quite down years, but then they slowly started to trickle back up.
Yeah, and that I think on the buyer side, at least I noticed a lot more buyers like demanding some kind of evidence that the product was worth keeping at that point. Where before they maybe didn't care as much. Like all of a sudden they're like, all right, if we're going to keep, like we're going to go down each of our products and say what kind of value are we actually getting out of these. Did you see the same?
Yeah, 100%. And I was still an active CISO at the time too, and it was the first time that I had seen in a long time where the CFO kind of entered the chat, so to speak, and said, well, hold on, like, if we don't cut this burn, then no company, then who cares about security, right? It's like
right.
None of us get paid if this doesn't happen, which makes sense because it was quite the squeeze on not just tech, but it was everybody who consumed tech as well. Like every business got super constrained because money was expensive, for the first time in the first 12 or 15 years, and we didn't know what we had until it was gone in the zero interest rate era. So yeah, very much pulling back, and a lot of teams downsized, or they never backfilled roles, so they were closed, and then easy to cut consulting spend or managed service spend, and then only keep the bare minimum you need to keep things running was like the name of the game for a few years.
And then the era we're in now, you call the uncertainty era. Why is that?
Yes. So this one I think it's the uncertainty era because things are getting more volatile, kind of across the board. So with 2025 came globally, like I witnessed this from the European side as well, but also looking at America, like people were, economic policies began to be more combative. They began to be more insular. So like let's keep what we have here and let's not worry about any help from anyone else. And then that kind of reciprocated into other countries saying, okay, now's our chance to do the exact same thing, or now's our chance to make alliances with countries that maybe we hadn't before. And then that precipitates into like all businesses as well. So it precipitates into how people move, like where they go live, where they may go to college, where they may find a job. And so because of the wild whipsawing of economic policies and tariffs and things like that, although we were rebounding from the 2022 crash, it was super uncertain, and people had to then operate companies and hire differently as well. So jobs kind of froze because people didn't want to move because they were worried that their jobs was going to be at stake. So a lot less movement. People didn't want to spend money into new companies. They wanted to put money into existing companies to make sure they were stable. And so and then you see this kind of replicating out across the world. I was sitting like an email about it. Like, here's kind of what I expect to see like happen to the cyber industry, and just to some of I call them the OGs of the newsletter, people who've been reading the longest. But like your suppliers are going to be constrained, and so are your customers. Like they're all going to start pulling back, similar to 2022. So you need to start preparing for these kinds of iterations to the market.
So is it like it seems like first of all, I love the uncertain area. I love that naming. So what you're saying is basically this is from a cybersecurity perspective, this is a reflection of where we are in general, like in the world today with AI and everything. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a response to the way the world is moving and working, like kind of in general, and how even just trade between countries has changed pretty dramatically, and where companies may exist. Like for example, so companies may second guess to go to other countries to further the company or to raise further money. They may stay right where they are or stay locally into their continent, that then maybe detracts from what would have happened in that other economy that it was going to. So it just kind of restricted the free trade, which is like a mirror of what was happening in the rest of the world. And then it's largely kind of shaken out some in 2026, but there's still some weird shoots, and there's some things that will probably never go back. And like that's I had a hunch on that in the annual report that we may get to later, but about did the stance of these economic policies change where cyber funding went and like what it looked like?
One question is like, how much is AI related specifically to the uncertainty this uncertainty uncertainty era that you've defined here? I mean, I was talking to some random kids yesterday, met some friend of a friend, and they were one was a college graduate, and, cyber and computer science. Can't find a job, just can't find a job. And AI is just completely disrupting. It seems to be disrupting not only from the ATS perspective, but also, functionally, who wants to hire a junior engineer when, you have Claude Code. So my question to you is, specifically with the uncertainty area, how much of a percentage is that related to AI right now, would you say?
When I first kind of named it, we didn't, things that move so fast in the AI space, it's hard to imagine that we would be where we are now when 2025 started.
Yeah. 6 months, big deal. Yeah.
It's a huge deal. And so it was definitely a big part of it because it looked and felt like nothing we'd seen before. People kept trying to compare it to SaaS or the .com bubble, but it didn't move the same way. And it had far more highs and lows to the market based on, the success for the earnings of NVIDIA or not. They tripled revenue, but they really wanted to quadruple revenue, and now everyone's upset. The market goes down, and then you realize that was kind of propping up most of the U.S. markets, which is not the economy, but people feel like it is because they have, they may have money invested, or they maybe feel like that's the only visible sign they can see outside of grocery store. It feels true, yeah. So it's a big part, and it's getting more. But it's, especially as AI is going, because it's its own industry, but it's very much like cyber in that it is a horizontal. It's in everything now. Mm-hmm. The way cyber is a part of everything, and so it's hard to calculate just how much it's going to overtake, and how real is it for replacing jobs. Possibly very real for certain types of jobs, and then some of the largest companies in the world are trying their best to automate complete job functions wholesale. So it's a very big part of it, and I think it's only going to get more important.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're going to pause here for an ad break, and if we can coerce another 30 minutes out of you, Mike, we're going to do a part 2 on this, and I'm going to jettison the news segment.
Okay.
In place of that.
That works.
All right. Excellent. We'll be right back. Zero Trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny at execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's Zero Trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Right now with Tanium, IT and security teams complete patching programs in minutes, not weeks. Reduce software vulnerabilities by up to 97%. Cut incident response times by up to 99%. This is not just IT, this is autonomous IT, making business, your business, unstoppable. Tanium, autonomous IT, unstoppable business. See more at securityweekly.com/Tanium. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. We're back for part 2 of our interview with Mike Privette. We decided to jettison the news segment because there's just so much to talk about here. We're having a good time talking about it. So we're going to continue here. I think we will wrap with a few squirrel stories, and I do want to hear what you're up to at RSA, Mike. But yeah, let's jump back in where we left off. I think something maybe we didn't fully wrap up. I shared that image of 2022 and the market kind of fell out, and it looked like it recovered. Certainly, I think AI has maybe done a lot to do that. I think it was November 2022 when ChatGPT came out, and every roadmap got rewritten, and then MCP and agents came out, and every roadmap got rewritten again. Everyone, and I mean every roadmap, right? Like even Apple's roadmap for its phones and stuff like that. It was incredible. I've never seen I've never seen a single technology rewrite every company's product roadmap.
Yeah.
So where are we now? I saw layoffs in your report upticked a little bit, but not crazy. But we never used to see layoffs at all, and they never really fully went away after 2022.
Yeah, no, they didn't. It was a new thing, and 2022 and 2023 were quite bad. Everyone had to cut burn super quickly, and then companies figured out how to survive a bit more, like a bit more lean, a bit. They changed some of their approaches, some of the back end things, like operational aspects of it, and then companies that started forming at that time started smaller, like they went leaner.
Seems like a net positive, right?
I think so. Yeah, it's probably long overdue. And obviously I'd hate to be one of those people affected by the layoffs, but I think the companies that then started from a basis of we can't do the same tactics and let's not just hire 1 million people and then hope magic happens. Let's try to build a company like a smarter way. I think we're all better for it. But even still, that companies are having to figure out how to move and shake, and AI helped a lot of those things. I think some companies are probably going to live a lot longer than they should have because AI will help strengthen things along. I think several companies will come into existence that never could have because AI is going to help them. So I think there'll be some net positives on some of those things as well. And but then so it's still a business, right? You still have to run that, and people still have to make kind of the best financial decisions. However, but the further AI goes, the more people kind of take cues from the largest tech companies on, like, especially if you're ever on Twitter, like, oh, if this company can lay off half their workforce, why can't we? And just because, and like, let's backfill with AI.
So on that, I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but I have a post on this called "AI is not taking jobs," and I think the main confusion is that we talk about jobs as if they're all single tasks, right? Like all a developer does is write code, and we completely ignore all the other tasks a developer has to go through. And the fact that it actually takes time to vibe code. I saw some friends of mine were like, I play a lot more video games now that I started vibe coding because I need something to do while I wait on it. Right.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So,
that's right.
We've heard people talk about, like in the future, there's just going to be one person companies, right? Like eventually we'll see the first, single employee unicorn. Right. And, like, do you see that happening? Like I've seen a few out there that are really just a single founder running the company. Like there's a few examples of that out there, even before AI. Like there are a few examples of that. But do you think we're going to see a major shift there, or like 10 years from now, we're still going to have several people in marketing, several people in sales, right? Several people in engineering.
Yeah, I think we'll still have that same kind of feel like many years later. I mean, you've got the breakouts like the guy who made OpenClaw. I think that's probably one of the most successful ones, but very quickly acquired by OpenAI, and which was a huge fumble for Claude. But I think you can go so far if what you're selling is like a simple service or consulting. Like, you can grow pretty well, and you charge a lot of money for some of these things. But it's hard to imagine a world where like a serious security company is a one person, and then they're landing like contracts with like the largest companies or governments around the world. Like it doesn't seem like it would pass any sniff test, no matter how good the tech is.
Right.
And there's still like risk management to be done.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
So I don't think it will ever go that way. And also it's actually really hard to run a business and really hard to write software and do all that stuff, even with AI. In fact, like, I spend quite a bit of time with using AI coding tools, and like I realized, the more I do with it, the more I have to like learn, the more work there actually is to get it. And truthfully, the more respect I have for people who do this, like for real, with like real large companies and stuff. So it's not simple, and I think most people are not willing to put in the effort to go do all of that themselves. Like by and large, they'd much rather just get a job. which is safer and simpler, and can and probably make you a lot more money than trying to do it on your own.
Well, maybe a converse question. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Maybe a related question is, as cybersecurity teams have run lean, as we all know, for many years. Do you think now with the new vendor pool that's coming out, AI enabled or not, does that mean that teams are still going to stay lean, in the future? What are your thoughts from everything you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, from all accounts, like lean is here to stay on that front. But I think lean will be a lot more capable than it used to be if you don't fit in the same paradigm. So like, the concept of, every large company I've worked at, there is a person who is named to a tech, or worst case, a vendor. Like you are the McAfee person, or like
Right.
you get named that way. I think that concept it's been fading pretty
Operators, security team people as tool operators, right?
as tool operators operating operationally. I think that'll go away. I think, and the teams the lean teams
As well
who
it should.
I think so.
Yeah.
And it's something that I would love to see, but yeah, I think it's the teams I think that'll be successful are the ones who kind of lean closer in to look more like DevOps and more like platform engineering teams who build and run and operate the things that they have, and they have like kind of responsibilities to do these things. And I don't mean vibe coding at all. Like, could you vibe code a CrowdStrike? Maybe, but I don't think you should ever do that. Like, no person should do that. Like there are better uses of that kind of tech, and like stringing together disparate systems, helping you create reports, and doing some kind of like initial analysis things, like kind of the sticky pieces between operating the tools and reporting to people and follow up on threats. That is very manual and screen heavy and click heavy. Like that's where I think the teams who are going to do the best, who are lean and who lean into that and get everybody like, Copilot or Claude Code licenses will do the best. And they'll be the fastest to be able to maneuver and accept more work or do a lot more with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be healthy, because it's like I've been in so many organizations where what is it you do? I'm the WAF guy. I come to work, I log into the WAF, I click stuff, and I go home. And there's just all these. I think of them as I had another post on this, the market for lemonade, where like these are just busy work. These tools are just busy work generators, and then you have busy work generators on top of those, that kind of leverage the data that come out of those, and that's the lemonade. And
the managers,
like at some point you have to ask, like, what if we just got rid of the WAF? Like, would we be hacked immediately? Like there's no sense of how much value you're getting out of a lot of these products, and none of these folks are really doing security work. They're babysitting these tools, and they don't really have a concept of, is this thing entirely misconfigured? Or these, am I just creating more problems for IT, than actually stopping attacks? And if that gets us focused, I think it's worth it.
I think so too. And to be honest, I think most security work is not security work. Like 90% of it's just boring sec is what I call it. It's all these things that are like the process of doing stuff in the business, like access requests, or like, very little of it's that exciting, or like maybe there's certain pockets.
We need more fun sec, less boring sec, more fun sec.
Right. That's exactly it. And I think that'll be a benefit if the companies who lean into letting their teams use AI, like they will have more fun building stuff.
Absolutely. So as a follow-up to that, how much of the, I think this might be surprising for a lot of people, like how much AI is there in the cybersecurity market compared to like the other categories? Because it feels like it's everything everywhere all the time.
Yeah. If you listen to the marketing, it is the entirety of the market. But it's something I kind of observed over the course of the year was that, there was a very small market for the actual security of AI applications and foundation models. It was a very small number of companies. I think when like, ChatGPT and the others hit the world, people thought, okay, that's the thing. Like that's now there is an AI for security category, and that's what we'll be, or security for AI category, and that's what we'll be doing. And then you realize the pool of customers to buy that is actually extremely small. Like it's only like 5 or 6 companies who are going to be buying that, because everyone else realizes that they should just use the foundation models because they are leapfrogging anything else like outside of it. And so then people realized that was kind of like a very shallow market, and they pivoted to, well, let's make AI for security, and that's going to be the next thing. And so everyone slapped AI or agentic AI or MCP on in front of whatever else they were doing in security. And then when you peel back and you look at these companies, because I look at every single company that goes in the newsletter and try to dissect what they do and try to translate it into something that is human readable or like understandable. You realize like, oh, you're using AI possibly throughout some piece of what you're already doing, but the core of your business might be email security. Like your whole purpose is looking at emails to make sure you don't have malicious attachments, business email compromise, that you don't have like DNS misconfigurations that can allow for spam or fraud. You just so happen to use AI throughout some component of that, and you brand yourself as an AI first security company. Well, that's not really true, because that's saying you're like, and I also use cloud services. So I'm a cloud first, AI first, email for, you start peeling that away. And I'm like, there's not really a separate market here. The rest of this, the AI for security space is just the rest of the security market itself. So such that I've stopped categorizing companies that way. So, I know some people love the terminology, and they'll say like, oh, there were like 500 AI security companies last year. Like that's just patently untrue. It's completely like misleading.
Categorization is the toughest thing. I find it is one of the toughest things,
especially if you don't try.
Everybody's, yeah.
There's actually two parts you mentioned. Oh, I like the two parts you mentioned. You have AI for security and security for AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway.
Yes, that's the way I kind of bucket them up, and like I've kind of, to make it even more simple. It's like the AI for security is just more security, faster, and hopefully better. Like because you're using AI to like enable something either you couldn't do before or like at a much greater speed than what you could before.
And yeah, a good example of the other one, security for AI, prompt foo is a good example of that, which got picked up by OpenAI. I saw. It's one of the questions I wanted to ask is, I think there were some product categories we expected to be just completely rebuilt and reimagined with AI. I know it's a bit early to really say this, that things are still happening, but what are you actually seeing? Like SOC was one of them. And then I think APSEC was one of them. Like, where is AI actually transforming markets versus maybe having less impact than we might have thought, or a bunch of VCs with investments might have hoped?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think they all hoped that we would solve the SOC problem in like their mind of like too many alerts, not enough people, not enough time. And I know we'll just throw AI at it. And and then the other end of the spectrum is like too many vulnerabilities, too many application issues. Let's throw AI at that to dig that down. So they effectively, you're thinking about like a pie. They were trying to solve from both ends, where like in one end you say, oh, I know, because we have 10,000 alerts a second, let's throw AI agents at it to eat those 10,000 alerts away, and then only show the good ones. And the other side says, actually, let's not make those alerts to begin with. Let's eat this side of it. So we produce less to begin with, and which both are great.
I don't know about that. Look at the price.
In theory,
doing both.
Yeah. Well, it's a if you now it comes down to preference, right? So like, which theory did you believe in? Like the eat the alerts or like don't produce the alerts? I think both could have some merit on the surface, but then you realize, AppSec and security operations is a very heterogeneous thing at all companies. Like it does not start and stop in the same way. They don't operate the same way. Even if they buy very similar tools, it doesn't look and feel the same way. It's not operated day to day in any way that is similar from one company to the next. And so it's very hard to have a kind of an outsized impact on that. especially if you're not used to using something like that. It's like, okay, now you've churned through the 10,000 low level events. Now I have, 100 medium level events that I still can't get through. And so now what? So, so I think people expected a lot more to happen in that space. You saw a lot of AI for SecOps companies come out, and like version 1 of the agent solves all the problems of the volume of alerts. You see wave 2 now saying, well, okay, maybe we can't solve all the alerts, but maybe we can help you threat detect better. So maybe let's move up a notch and let's find anomalies as opposed to just solving the low stuff. Or let's help you with some SOC automation or just things that help improve the SecOps workflow a bit more. So you see a lot more companies doing that, and I think that might be slightly more successful. But the companies that I think are having the biggest impacts, or like the areas, are things like data loss prevention. Like it's actually now much simpler to find and identify like data leakage or intellectual property that doesn't have a nice categorization at the bottom that says confidential. This is like IP data, or intent-based things like we intend to acquire a company may not show up nicely in a perfectly DLP capture, but an LLM can find that easily, or an SLM. So I think that's seeing a lot of effort, or a lot of headway, or people saying, hey, we want to use these new tools safely. Can you please help us, one, discover it, and then make sure we don't accidentally do something stupid? And so the governance and the DLP tools are actually having like the best time right now.
Yeah. It's it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, using regex or even ML, was just always challenging because there's like, how do you ML a press release, right?
Yeah. Right.
There's a lot of data that just doesn't fit into pattern matching or simplistic pattern matching. Eamon, where do you think we should go next?
Oh, I was thinking the acquirers, like any interesting acquirers.
Yeah.
Yep.
In the past, we've seen weird stuff over the last couple of years, right? Like MasterCard's picked up a couple. I don't think any of us would have predicted Google going all in on security in the way that they did. The Google SecOps piece wasn't a big surprise because they essentially launched it, right? They were one of the founding investors, but then Mandy and Wiz was just kind of like, wow, they're really, really getting into it. But then we also saw an AS400 shop acquire a couple dozen vendors. That was Help Systems, and they rebranded as Fortra. And a German grocery store picked up Paterva, Meltigo, and like a couple other things. Insurance companies picking up external attack surface management vendors. Like, what's next on your non-traditional acquire bingo card?
Well, honestly, I think the verticalization of these other big industries is becoming important because all of those things you mentioned like have had like devastating attacks, like it's kind of like worldwide across like especially retailers and grocery stores. I think even like Nozomi Networks, like an IoT company, was bought by an IT manufacturer company, or like Mitsubishi, and so it's like these companies are realizing that they have to like get a lot closer to the security of whatever it is they're doing, I think. And so, I expect to see. It wouldn't surprise me if like a large like car manufacturer, or like especially like more like a Tesla or somebody else that might want to bake in closer security to that front. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't see the insurance thing makes sense because like it's a great way for they're the original data crunchers and risk manufacturers, and so they know they need to know how much to charge you and like what's the likelihood of these breaches happening. So some of it just makes perfect sense, like with ServiceNow saying, "Oh, I just want more of the buyer, like pie." Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say with the insurance companies also to actively reduce your likelihood of having to file a claim.
That's true. Yeah. Because their goal is to never pay. So it's, they don't want to do that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Like car manufacturers, airplane manufacturers, those traditional organizations that have, you would even think about it even in tech, maybe getting involved. I guess anybody that has money, if they're liquid, I guess they're more likely in that case.
Right.
Which,
like that's another reason to get into this, right? Like the whole reason Apple wanted to make a car is they were running out of vertical like market to capture. So you have to spread to new markets. So like we've already seen OpenAI and Anthropic are both putting out security tools. You know, at least OpenAI has made acquisitions. Do you see them really kind of like Mandy and Wiz jumping into this space? What do you think?
No, I don't think so. Like, I think what's in their best interest is to like do whatever they can't do to secure the models themselves, because that is the consumption gateway. So like for them, if you think, I think about OpenAI and like and Anthropic and these other foundation model companies as like equivalent to like the other hyperscalers like AWS and Microsoft, whereas their goal is to get you on the platform and to build there. They don't care what you build as long as you build it there. And like their goal is to like be at the point of building and offer you as many services as possible to keep you in. And security is an easy add-on to that. So it's an easy way to them to sell more tokens, because tokens is the equivalent of compute, like in AWS or like cloud computing days. So the more I can incentivize you to spend tokens, the better. And who cares what you send it on? But I can also sell you some up value add services like security to help some of your extra things. But like at the meantime, they still need to have, like, I think there'll be very few security for AI acquisitions, because they'll want to just lock those down real quick, and then the foundation companies be better at that themselves, kind of like the way the large cloud providers like kind of build their own things as well. So I don't think we'll see a big wave of that, and I don't think we'll see a big wave of like AppSec companies who are using AI getting acquired. Like I think people will still have differentiation and choice, but I think it'll become like just a numbers game eventually, like kind of like the cheapest route, similar to the way other security markets have done, like where like the commoditization of pen tests and the like became hard to discern between, you know, one firm versus another.
So AI is a big trend, but it does feel like a trend. A couple of years back, I remember Wade Baker and Jay Jacobs, RSA gave them a bunch of data, and they did a whole talk on all the buzzwords over the years. And one I just wanted to pull out there because it was really important, but we also don't hear it anymore, was big data. You know, so it was a big deal when we got solid state drives, you know, much quicker access times, better bandwidth, and big data databases, you know, moving away from relational databases for some use cases. And that I would say that transformed the SIM market quite a bit, you know, and impacted some other markets too, especially anything that was really data hungry. And you know, so to close out the chat about AI here, you know, do you see this term kind of floating away, where it's you know, kind of like big data, like nobody ever talks about it anymore, even though it's embedded in everything? And I think there was another aspect to that, you know, so Eamon was also wondering about, like, when do founders get to raise money without having to talk about AI?
Like, I speak to some founders and they're like, we don't have AI in product. And, you know, personally, I'm like, well, why not? But I guess there could be cases. So like, you know, do you think, I mean, nobody's funding anyone without AI in their pitch deck. What are your thoughts on all that, and what Adrian mentioned is like it being a kind of thing?
Well, so I think it's going to be a thing for a little while longer. You know, every investor I talk to is saying like they tell all their portfolio companies that they have to have an AI story, and then you often hear kind of the flip side of that, saying from the founder side saying, well, my investor said we had to have an AI story. And so then now you see, because it's, you know, we're on year 3 now, people are a lot more discerning than they used to be. Like kudos to like the security industry for kind of catching up and maybe leaning more into this tech than I think what I saw in the cloud security or cloud front revolution, because they're now like asking a lot better questions, and they're now a lot more discerning of the fact that just because you have AI in the product doesn't mean anything. Like, why are you using AI? Like, what's the point of it, and does it actually get me anything other than a chatbot? You saw that kind of like quickly fall out of scope of like people what cared about. Like, nobody wanted another chatbot when every company produced a chatbot. But you still have to, like, it's getting close, I think, to become the assumption, like, yeah, of course you use AI for some of these things. Like, of course you use cloud to deliver these services as well. Nobody asked about that. So I think we're probably like another year out, short of some like major like leap, technological or inference level leap on the AI models where they can do some pretty wild things that are kind of hard to imagine. I don't see why you'd have to talk about it much longer, because it would just be, well, is the product good? Does it do what I need it to do? And I hear a lot of people coming back to that. Like, don't sell me on the AI piece. I'm only going to question it if you say you don't use it, or if you talk about it too much. Like, if you say that this is the differentiating factor, I'm going to say that's probably not true. But yeah, so we still have a little bit of time, and not every cyber as an industry has a lot of investors. Like, I've tracked like almost 7,000 different investors over the past 10 years or so. And then there's a core like top 100 of them who are the big names you expect investing in cyber. But anybody invests in cyber because it's been a profitable market for a long time. So you have a lot of people who are not specialists in maybe not even tech, let alone cyber, enter the space, and so they may want different things out of the marketing and their portfolio companies.
Yeah. Well, we can hope, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
I think the foundation model companies are kind of incentivized to at least pretend like some new breakthroughs happened, so that their bubble doesn't pop and they can keep the money flowing. But we'll see. I think the last question we probably have time for, and this is one I talk about a lot on a third-party risk management podcast that I do for Tensi Security. And they're a Brazilian company, so I think that's one of the reasons it comes up a lot more there. I think it's more just that it's third-party risk management. And one of the top topics there is now sovereignty, like Europe, even Canada. A lot of companies want nothing to do with US tech companies. So I wonder how that trend is impacting the security side of things, because obviously security trust is a big requirement when choosing a vendor.
And following up on that, like Mike, because I feel like we're in such a bubble here in the US, and you being in Europe for the past couple of years or few years, have a good pulse on what's going on.
You're probably
there, right?
seeing it.
Yeah. So really curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, and so I mean, I hear the word sovereignty a lot here, and all over Europe, and it's a big thing. And it's also one of those nebulous terms that kind of means a lot of different things to a lot of people. But it is very much the sentiment of, okay, we as a country are at a moment in time, and I hear this not just in UK but other countries, to like kind of make our own claim to things where maybe we're not so reliant on other countries' technologies. I think this uncertainty period has given countries kind of an inward look, saying, "Well, hey, we don't even have an ecosystem here." Like, you often hear like, "Oh, there's no large tech companies in Europe." And there's other large companies, but most of the world relies on the U.S. for tech companies, and so people say, "Well, why can't we build that here?" And I'm like, "Well, you can. It just takes decades, and it takes a long time of economic policy and social policy to kind of incentivize those things. But if you don't start ever, then it'll never grow." But in looking at the data from 2025, I had a theory going into it because of the policies and because of like just the sentiment and how people wanted to disassociate from the U.S. and in many ways. I had a theory that that the money would also follow the same route. So I thought, okay, I bet other countries pull back from investing in the U.S. where so like maybe a European investor would maybe invest in a U.S. company. Maybe they skip that because they have taken a stance that they only want to serve the European or like Asian market or something like that. And then so I kind of expected local economies to grow as opposed to more money going only to the U.S. And So I trended over the last 3 years, and you see kind of a steady growth, over like, a little bit of growth in Europe, spending on Europe. And then like you see a big jump in 2025. So they spend a lot more money than they used to. And then consequently, you see Europe spending a lot less money in the US, but also a lot less money in the UK as well, interestingly enough. And then you see the same thing with the US spend a whole lot more money on itself. Yeah, Brexit, we give the gift that keeps giving, I guess. But the US did what you expected and just turned inward. They stopped investing pretty much everywhere else except the US. And so the US went way up on itself, which is kind of like what they were trying to do. And it basically stayed flat everywhere else outside of the US. And then similar with UK, like they spent more money in Europe, they spent more money on themselves, and spent less money in the US. And so this is just like the beginning of it. And like the numbers are very different because like this economies of scale are very different. But I expect this trend to continue as these things. Some bells cannot be unrung, and once the movement gets going, I don't think people are going to want to stop. But I also think it's probably a good thing. Like it's probably better for competition. It's probably better for like a good market, instead of just having to rely on one provider. And then it also then can help aid these sovereignty stories of like, well, where down the chain does sovereignty stop and start? And is it just the data that resides in this country, or is it the servers? Is it the hardware? Is it the power? Is it all these things that
it's
legal? Have? Yeah, but that too,
right? It's Cloud Act is a big one that I hear from a lot of people. It's as long as a U.S. company or U.S. law enforcement can reach in there and grab your data, regardless of where it's stored, who cares about residency if that doesn't stop that from happening?
Yeah, and also that's one of my central things about it. I'm like, well, when push comes to shove, if there's like wartime or if there's like, just an overreaching administration, they'll get what they need to if your data, your systems are there. Like it kind of doesn't matter what your other laws say. So like this is the kind of push of like, is it? And I think the challenge would be not to let it turn into a marketing exercise. I can just add like a couple extra percentage points to like a cloud bill. I'm like, yes, we're sovereign. But are you really? And or did you just pay more money?
Yeah.
Check
that box. All right. Well, we are going over a bit on time here. Frustratingly, we're running out of time again. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Hope we run into you at RSA. But before we let you go, we're going to go through a few of our squirrel stories because I feel like we deserve it and our audience deserves it. And we need some humor to wrap things up here. So the first squirrel story, this is security vendor Maze created basically like an Onion type site where it's just entirely satire focused on cybersecurity. And I didn't realize that I was reading this, like there's a few other stories here I recognize from late last year. Vulnerability Scanner now offers discounts for every finding it gets wrong. That's the one I saw last year. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. It like a photo of a guy holding up like negative revenue.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think this site's hilarious. There's so many good ones, and they often catch me off guard. And I'm like, "Wait, okay, this is the exploit." I'm reading.
And this one is judge sentences CISO to 8 consecutive hours on RSA Expo floor as formal punishment for security breach.
The poor guy.
And the photo's perfect. Like these are AI generated photos. Like that looks like it was taken on the RSA floor. Like that is incredible. They must have given it an actual photo of RSA.
It's hilarious. I love the Onion. I mean, I know a CISO friend. He still buys the physical version. And has it on his desk. I'm like, is that the Onion? Like, I didn't realize they still had print. I think they brought it back. So,
no idea.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I'm all for this. We need this.
Yes, we need more humor. And we need more ridiculous takes like this.
And the other bit of levity here is the Norwegian Consumer Council released a video they produced called "A Day in the Life of an Enshittificator." And if you've heard the term enshittification, you probably know Cory Doctorow, and the term was coined by him. And he had something to do with this. I haven't read the full story yet, but he was in Norway or something, but Cory Doctorow is the reason that this video exists, which I think is great. But for people who don't know, the process of enshittification is when a product is great for consumers, and then it prioritizes people putting ads on the platform and deprioritizes the consumers. And then it even deprioritizes the people putting ads on the platform and just tries to optimize like all the money for itself. And so that's enshittification. It, like, this once great product or good idea turns into crap for everybody.
Oh man, it sounds like how social media is devolving.
Yeah, I mean, there are many, many great examples of this happening where, like, first it's the users complaining about the product, and then it's the people who, because if it's a free product, like, it's probably advertising driven, and even the advertisers are now complaining about the product. That's the sign when the advertisers are complaining about the product. That is when enshittification has. That's how you can confirm that it's happened.
It's peak.
Yeah.
Yeah, peak enshittification. Yeah, so this video is great. It's just this guy whose job it is to enshittify things, to make things worse, and he's cutting a hole in somebody's socks. He's just following people around, just making their day a little bit worse. And he talks about discovering the internet, and now he doesn't. Now instead of making one person's life worse, he now has the scale of the internet and all its resources. So it's
incredible.
It does a great job. I
love it.
Yeah, but awesome. The end. The lesson from all this is that it doesn't have to be like this, right? So right to repair repairable devices. Like it's real big in Scandinavia and in Europe. Europe is the one kind of forcing Apple to make everything USB-C, to make everything more easily repairable, to open up app stores. So they're kind of leading the way on this. So it's not surprising to see this come out of Norway.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for joining us and doing a little bit of the news with us and walking us through your findings. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back on again. Always good to talk to you guys, and hope to see you at RSA.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, hope to see you too. I'm sure we will at some point.
We have to. Yeah.
Big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. As I've mentioned several times, we'll be at RSA when you hear this. This will come out on day 1 of RSA. So if you're there, say hi, come hit us up at some of the many events that we'll be at, which I'm sure we've all shared on LinkedIn at this point. And we'll have some amazing interviews lined up for you for the next episode, since we won't be producing one. Helen Patton talks about her latest book. Lenny Zeltzer talks about his 6 years of experience, some of the stuff that he learned as a CISO for 6 years at Exonius. And Alexandre Sierra is going to talk about some big changes happening in the third-party cyber risk management space. And we'll see you again the week after that. Bye-bye.